Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 501 of Ink in Your Veins. I'm Rachel Herron, and I'm so thrilled that you are here with me today as I talk to Nicole Graev Lipson. This is a fantastic, lovely conversation about how to reframe what writing success is and also when you might want to do it. We also talk about what success looks like on any given changing day and also how to find trust in ourselves as writers, accessing solitude, and how taking ourselves seriously is actually a really deep kindness, which maybe if you've been around here for a little while, you already know that taking yourself seriously as a writer is one of the kindest things you can do for yourself as a writer. So that's coming up. I know that you will enjoy it so much. I did. What's been going on around here? Well, I can't remember if I knew this last week, but my audiobook narrator for Seven Miracles of Beatrix Holland has been chosen, and they went with my suggestion, which is Exie Sands, and she is incredible. She has narrated three, six, at least at least seven of my other books. And she is tremendous. She does so many big names, really big names. She does all of Kristen Higgins' books. She does Julia Blackwell's books. Uh, and she brings her own following, which is an interesting thing to think about when you're thinking about audiobook narrators, is that she has fans who don't care who the writer is. They just want to hear Exie read it. And recently, I was listening to a book where I felt the same way. I loved this narrator so much. I've never actually had that feeling because I don't listen to many audiobooks. It's only been recently that I've been getting into reading audio fiction because I have a little handheld pocket game on my phone that I like. So I listen to books while I'm doing it. But I've found a few narrators that I would follow around just because I love the way that they tell stories. And I got Exie. So that's amazing. And I met with my agent yesterday to just talk about things because we are going into a publicity and marketing chat with my team over at Grand Central Publishing, which is at Hachette tomorrow morning. So I met with my agent before, and it was just so fun to catch up with her. And we have been together now, I realized, 17 years. That makes me sound, oh my God, we've been together for 17 years. That can't be right. 2008 and is 25 now. I think that that's 17 years. That is how long I've been with her. And as I have frequently said before, I didn't know who she was. I liked her name. Her name is Susanna Einstein. She was my 32nd query. So by then I'd run through everybody I'd researched. I didn't know who she was, didn't know what she represented. I did look at her website just to make sure she was real. And I was her second client. Maybe I was her third, now that I think about it. But her first one was dead. It was an estate that she was managing. And I think it must have been her third because Lara's Island was already, because I called her other client to say, how is it working with Suzanne Einstein? Because that is a thing that can be a great piece of due diligence to do. You don't necessarily have to. If you click with the agent and you know they're legit, you can just decide to be represented by them. But a nice piece of due diligence is getting a name of somebody that they work with. Of course, they're going to give you the name and phone number of somebody that they work with who has agreed to talk to other people about being agented by this agent. So it is what it is. But I remember having that conversation. So I talked to her, and I'm excited about the meeting tomorrow. I have done what I can do, which is I have looked at my numbers. I know how many people are on my mailing list and my Instagram following and my TikTok and my two Facebooks. I have an author account and a personal account. And I will go into that meeting tomorrow with the attitude of I'm just going to say yes to everything because I love to say yes to everything and I will do all the things. I am, as always, uncertain about how anybody really knows how to market a book. New York Publishing tries their best, but they are definitely the most monetarily motivated to sell books, and it's hard for them to do so. So again, if you're struggling to sell your own books, that's normal. That's normal. New York Publishing struggles to figure out how to do that. I did have a thought about talking about miracles on TikTok. I had a great conversation with Sasha in either the last or the second to last chat that we had. If you're on my Patreon, you may be able to listen to that one. It may not be out yet. I think it was on this most recent one. So it's just available to Patreon members. You could join that at patreon.com/Rachel and listen to the most recent episode with Sasha, where she was talking about, she really made me think about TikTok in a different way, in that it is actually about discoverability and how the algorithm there apparently pushes you out to people that you don't know, which I didn't actually know and I should have known. But it would be fun. This book is called The Seven Miracles of Beatrix Holland, and she experiences seven miracles and then she dies. I mean, that's what the fortune teller says will happen to her. Um, so there are miracles in the book, or are they miracles? Are they things that could be explained away? And I think that would be a fun thing to talk about on TikTok, or to talk to people about on a TikTok live or something like that. So I am definitely willing to go into this meeting with ideas and to take ideas and to do them. And I am excited about ramping up into this season of releasing a book, because it's been like 3 years since I released a traditionally published book. So it's been a while, and I know things have changed, I'm sure. And this is a new team. I've never been with Hachette before. So that will be interesting, and I will keep you posted. The book comes out August 17th, I think, August 17th or 19th, and I will be telling you all about it then, but it is pre-orderable. It is my job as an author to tell you that this cozy, witchy, queer fantasy, it's not really a fantasy. It's cozy and queer, set in contemporary today, but there's some witches and some magic. Does that make it fantasy? Maybe. I don't know. Words are hard. Genres are hard, but it's cozy and queer. And it's sweet. And it's a little tiny bit scary, but not very scary, because I am a big wuss when it comes to scary things. So that's going to happen tomorrow. And I think that's all the business stuff that's been going on. I've just been enjoying writing. Things are feeling good. I realized that last week I was really feeling on top of things, and kind of this week, not so much, but last week I was really feeling on top of things, because maybe for the first time in my life, I really did give myself way less to do than I wanted to give myself to do, and I completed them. And then I could stop working and I could rest, and it was great. And I enjoyed that. So I'm reminding myself, Rachel, that you need to do that more often. It's not happening today. Looking at my schedule, it will happen tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm going to go to my sister's house and write at her place, because she's currently pet sitting at a beautiful house in Coro, where it just looks over the whole harbor, and there's a big, big storm rolling in, and she's got a fireplace, and I'm going to work there. Doesn't that sound fun? She moves out of it on Sunday, and she moves into her own flat, which is located near me. So she will be not doing the pet sitting anymore, not staying in the driveway, not living in her caravan anymore. When she's not pet sitting, she'll have her own apartment. I'm so happy. The big sister in me is so happy about my little baby sister, who's like 45 years old, and I don't need to worry about her, but I do anyway. That's enough of an update. Here we go with our interview. Nicole Graev Lipson is the author of the memoir-in-essays Mothers and Other Fictional Characters. Her writing has been awarded a Pushcart Prize, selected for the Best American Essays Anthology, and shortlisted for a National Magazine Award. Her work has appeared in The Sun, Virginia Quarterly, River Teeth, The Washington Post, The Boston Globe, among other publications. Nicole holds a bachelor's from Cornell University and an MFA from Emerson College. Originally from New York City, she lives outside of Boston with her family. Here is the interview. I know you're going to love it. Go get some of your own writing done. Come tell me about it. I would love to know. And if you're not on my newsletter where I talk about writing and all of the other things, please get on it. I love to have you there. rachelherron.com/write. Here we go with the interview with Nicole. Well, I could not be more pleased to finally have you on the show. Will you please share your name and your
Yes.
pronouns with us?
Sure. My name's Nicole Graev Lipson. She, her.
Thank you. Welcome to the show. We've been trying to get this done for a while, and I'm so excited to talk to you about this
I'm
book and your writing.
I'm so excited as well. Thank you for having me.
This is your debut full-length book, right? Debut
It
memoir.
is. It is my debut full-length book. Yes, I've
And
published articles and essays, but this is the first product I can hold in my hand with covers.
how did it feel to hold it? Was it your first time holding it? Was it with the ARC?
Yes, the ARC was the first moment that I could sort of hold the essays, the memoir and essays together as an object. But it was really exciting to have the actual final product, the finished book, arrive in
Yeah.
its box. And I made sure to get a video of that. And it was a really exciting moment. Yeah, a little surreal, but very
Very
exciting.
surreal. I forgot. I bet I could find that somewhere. I did a video of my very first unboxing, and I remember it was great. It was great, and then I started crying, and I ordered my partner to turn off the video because I wasn't expecting to do that. So,
That's amazing. Well,
and
it was
yeah,
authentic, right?
yeah. And your book is from Chronicle, which does
Correct.
gorgeous books. I have to say that I loved the book. Motherhood and everything relating to mothers, daughters is always my core story, my core jam. Your writing is
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Thank
And
you.
but I only read it in the digital version because it is way too expensive to get books over here in New Zealand, the actual physical book. What does the book look like from Chronicle? Because they do such beautiful work.
Oh, they do. Here, I can hold it up.
Please do for the people who are on the
But the beauty,
podcast.
that's what the book looks like. But what you can't tell on the screen is that this is all embossed.
Ah, it's a kind of
Um,
light yellow tan cover, mothers and other fictional characters, and then there are
mhm.
people, it looks like, mothers and daughters in green, pink, and orange in silhouette. And so they're kind of embossed in that color.
Yes, they're embossed and the lettering is embossed as well. And I actually had no idea that Chronicle was doing that until I opened the box of books. So that was really a lovely surprise because,
Oh, that is so cool.
publishers don't have to do that.
No,
And
and it
all of
costs them
those little
extra per
things,
book.
yeah, all of those little details cost extra. So I was very moved by the embossing, I have to say.
Mm, my first
Yeah.
memoir was with Chronicle and A Life in Stitches, and I remember it was a trade paperback, but they did this really beautiful flap fold in the front that they didn't have
Mm.
to do, and it was incredible. What was your experience like being at Chronicle? And I asked that specifically because they don't do much memoir.
Yeah,
Really
no,
limited.
yeah. I had a wonderful experience there. I think first and foremost because the editor who acquired my book just felt really passionately about it. And I think that's
Mm,
always a really auspicious place to start for any author when you have that real strong connection with your editor. And memoir and personal narrative is really a direction that Chronicle was expanding on too, when my book was acquired. So I think it was exciting for them as well.
perfect.
And as
It
we've sort
was,
of talked
yeah.
about, like I really appreciate how Chronicle cares about books as physical objects,
Hmm.
especially in our increasingly digitized world. I'm very into the tactile. I'm very
Hmm.
into aesthetics, and I can only read books. I mean, I can read digitally, but I far prefer to read books hard copy. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really appreciated that aspect of what they do specifically.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that they are still doing that. I just remembered this as you were speaking that for my cover I now have the rights back to that and I've republished it so it has a different cover. But the beautiful Chronicle cover had a chair and it was covered with a pile of sweaters and then I think yarn underneath the chair. But it was a photo shoot they did with it and most of the sweaters on that chair are ones that I made that I drove across the Bay
Oh,
Bridge to their office and gave, and then they took it to the photographer. So the sweater that, I talk about, like when my mother was dying making is there. And nobody else
wow.
does that. They really do. If listeners have ever bought a beautiful book in an airport or a museum shop, it's probably done by Chronicle. They're
Yeah. Or
incredible.
a lot of times, sort of those beautiful books that you see when you're by the register at a bookstore,
Yes, the
and you're
impulse
like,
buys.
yes, that's just so beautiful. I have to have it. Yeah, absolutely. I
So
love
it
that
is.
about the sweaters. That's such an
Isn't that
interesting
cool? I've forgotten
detail.
that. Um, Tell us what it's been like. Your book has been out now as we speak about 5 or 6 weeks. How
Mhm.
has it felt? Did you do a party? Did you do a release launch? What did you do?
Yeah, I did. I live in Brookline, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. And the launch, I mean, I have to be honest, it was probably one of my favorite nights of my life. It was just so special. I'm not gonna lie.
Good.
Um,
Tell us
but
everything. Where was it?
yeah, so In my town, Brookline, there is a wonderful independent bookstore called the Brookline Booksmith, which is really a town institution. And right across the street from it is this old 1920s Art Deco movie theater called the Coolidge Corner Theater, which is a nonprofit. So it's a functioning movie theater. They have great programming. And it's a nonprofit movie theater. There's a few of them in the country. And so I had the event at the Coolidge Corner Theater in one of their movie houses with the
Wow.
books provided by the Bookline Booksmith. And it was really it felt like such a community event with these two kind of adored local cultural institutions, both partnering up. And there's a really nice community of writers and authors in Boston. So a number of them there, and then just tons of friends, family, and community members, neighbors. So it was really lovely. And then I've had the great fortune of being able to travel a little bit and do some bookstore events outside of Boston as well, which has been really nice. And I have to say, for me, by far, the most exciting thing about having the book in the world is being able to connect with readers. I mean,
Mm.
just, after the years of working in solitude, not total solitude, I had writing workshops and
But
friends
it's a
who
lot of solitude.
it's a lot of solitude. I have friends who I'd share draft with, but you just don't know, how it's going to be received. And I thought a lot about audience and my potential readers when I was writing. I know some authors don't like to think about audience too much, like it makes them freeze up. But for me, maybe because of some of the things I was writing about, which were quite personal,
Hmm.
I thought a lot about connecting with readers, about, writing almost felt like reaching a hand out into the dark and saying,
Hmm.
I feel this way as a mother, as a woman, as a newly middle-aged woman, as a wife, maybe is there anyone out there who feels this way too? And so actually being able to talk to readers at bookstore events or hear from them via email or social media direct messages is just so wonderful. And I've, picked up a little correspondence with some of them. So that's been by far the best part.
That is the dream, right? You have been
Yeah.
writing in solitude for so long, and then now you're in correspondence with some of them. My first book came
Yeah.
out in 2010, and I'm still in correspondence with some of those very, very, very first readers. And
Yeah.
it's so, so
Right. And I
cool.
have gratitude to them, right? Because it's there's a lot of choices as to what one might read these days. There's a lot of
Yes.
choices as to how one might spend an hour to entertain themselves beyond reading. And so, for anyone to spend the number of hours that it takes to really sit down and engage with a book, I'm grateful and I don't take it for granted. I
By
really
choice.
appreciate it.
When
Yes.
these people are not our friends, they're not our neighbors, they don't have any responsibility to us, and they choose to do it anyway. It is the greatest gift. I know I have 1,000 books on my TBR pile that I want to be reading at all times, and I manage to get an hour or two in a day if I'm lucky,
Yeah.
So that's
Are
a
you a
really
fast
great thing to
reader?
say.
I'm a very slow reader. So
I
that's
am a very fast reader, but I just don't read I try to get about 100 books a year. I try to get a couple of books a week, but it's hard.
Yes.
And I always want more.
Yeah.
But even if you think about it, like I read a lot and I read quickly, and that's only 100 books a year. And there are so many books I want to read. So when somebody chooses our book to be with, it's just such a gift that they let us be able to do that. Oh, what a beautiful way to put that. Well, you talk to us a little bit about your process of writing this book. And actually, what does your writing process look like on a day-to-day basis, even now that the book is out? What is that?
So I've sort of made a pact with myself a number of years ago that I would devote 3 hours a day to writing, but that doesn't mean necessarily, I want to be very clear, that doesn't mean necessarily that I'm sitting there in front of my laptop typing
Mm-hmm.
away on a
Mm-hmm.
draft. It just means that I am blocking off 3 hours a day where I might be doing, I might be doing research. I might be reading over a draft of something. I might be ideating, I might be going through my journals and trying to find a nugget of something that I can use. So it's just that I'm setting aside that sort of brain time. Um, and and then when I do have a project that I am focused on, I'm quite a slow, deliberate writer. And I've just come to accept that about
Yeah, it's your
myself.
process.
It's my process. Like there were many years when a little young, I really against it. I really tried to fight it. I felt very frustrated by it. Be prolific. I wanted to get more out there. I have to accept that is for better or for worse, my process. And I to change it, it hasn't worked very well for me. So I go with it now. But I do think that there are some benefits to being a slow writer because an essay takes me usually at least 1 to 3, sometimes 4 months to write.
Hmm.
And I write long essays, just to be clear. Most of my
Yeah.
essays are like 7,500 words
Complex
long. So I'm not,
essays.
yes,
Yeah,
complex. So I'm not talking about like a 1,200
right,
word personal essay for, Huffington Post. It's like a
right.
longer kind of a thing. Um, what ends up happening is that lived experience during that time starts to get folded into the piece. And I don't know about you, but I feel like as soon as I'm in the middle of a writing project, so many things start to accumulate around it. Like suddenly I'll be going through my day and maybe I'll be listening to a podcast and I'll hear something and I'll be like, oh, that really connects with this essay I'm writing about motherhood and solitude, and I'll
Hmm.
and I'll write it down. Or maybe, sometime in those 3 months, a friend will make a comment to me that I then have time to think about and absorb into the writing. So I've come to appreciate that, like how
Yeah,
being a bit of a slow writer allows time for these experience or related experiences to accumulate and to fold themselves into a piece of writing.
that's beautiful. And I find that all the time, that synchronicity that actually feels somehow magical. And that, how did you just say that word that I'm thinking so much about in this essay? Yeah,
A hundred
gorgeous.
percent. And it happens so often and it does almost feel
Yeah.
mystical.
As long as we are in the work, no matter what work we're doing, as long as we're in the work on a regular basis, I think that happens to all all writers. And it is that process of, you buy I can't remember the actual cognitive bias for it, but the is it the confirmation bias? That's not it. But it's something like that where you buy a white Volvo, you're going to see a lot of white Volvos, but it's still magic. It's still magic.
Oh
So,
yeah,
and I love that
yeah.
you said that about the 3 hours. 3 hours a day is what I think is perfect. That's about what I go for every day. Where does that usually fit in your day? Are you a morning, afternoon, evening person?
Yeah, I have 3 kids and
Ah,
they're all well into school age now,
yeah,
but it's definitely the sort of after drop off to lunch
yeah,
period.
perfect.
And after that, I sort of feel like, other thing the emails I need to return, the administration,
Life.
life, my other work. So yeah, it
Yeah.
that's really the limit. Yeah.
Oh, what were you going to say?
No, I'm saying
Oh, what is the most exciting thing you've ever realized about your writing process?
I think that it's getting to a point where I could trust
Mm.
that if I sat down and did the work and sort of believed in the method, believed in the process, that things would come.
Mm.
Like being okay with starting to learn to be okay with things not coming right away because I learned to trust that they would eventually come if I was writing, right? If I was working on it, if I kept going. And there's something very comforting about that,
Hmm.
because I think I used to think that I could lose it. I could lose my writing skill. I could lose, the whatever ability I had on the last essay. Um,
Hmm.
and I still feel that way, like whenever I'm starting a new piece, it doesn't matter how many essays I've written now in this point in my life. I sit down and I think, how the hell does one do this? Like, what? I'll even read over essays I've written and think, I wrote that? How did it come together? How did I do this? And just sort of stepping back and knowing that some sort of magic happens and that I can't control it, but that if I just sort of relax into the writing, put one sentence after another, some good will come out of it.
And for those listening who are like, well, how do I get that trust? I think the way that we get the trust is exactly what you said, is just the practice of sitting down, right? The trust is built, but we have to be the ones building it one little rung at a time.
I think it's also about reframing what I think or what one thinks success is on
Mm.
a given writing day.
Hmm.
So I'm not into word counts. I'm not really into productivity in the sense of, I have to get this many words or I have to sit for this exact amount of time and, keep the words going. Um, I will sometimes write out 3 pages. Part of my writing process sometimes is to just like free write in my journal, which I can't do on the computer because I start editing everything. But
Yeah.
if I do it by hand in a notebook, and I can write for 3 pages and it can all be utter crap, but there might be one phrase in that that's golden,
Mm.
and if I think of that as a success,
Yeah.
that I've come up with this golden phrase that I can now use in my essay, then that's a much better feeling than ending my 3 hours being like, what did I have to show for my time? Wrote 3 pages and I have one measly phrase, So I think it's just, yeah, kind of reframing again what we hope for out of each
Right.
day. And then there'll be some days where you're just on and a lot is coming out, you
And then there'll
know.
be some days when maybe you can't find where that golden nugget was, but it's there. You'll find it later, but maybe not
Mm.
that day. Yeah. Speaking of
Mhm.
the more struggle days, what part of writing do you struggle with the most?
Definitely getting started. Definitely getting started. I have no problem with ideas. I'm overflowing with
Mm,
ideas,
I'm
almost
jealous.
like too
And
almost
I'm one
too
of those
many ideas.
idea, like I have one idea at a time. That's all I got. I love talking to people who have that high ideation.
I have high ideation, but I really can only focus on one at a time. I'm always amazed by people who can be working on several projects. No, I have like a list in the back of my notebook of like all these different ideas, but and I can even take lots and lots of notes for a particular essay, but actually sitting there with the blank screen, and writing down that first opening sentence. Um, is daunting to me. It's actually less daunting when I'm actually doing it. It's bringing myself to do it.
Mm,
And part of that, I think, is that when when I'm in the idea stage, it feels like anything's possible. This is going to be the most amazing essay I've ever written. I
yes.
have all these ideas, and it's all going to come together so beautifully. You have like all these dreams. So I think what I resist or what I put off is almost letting that dream go a little bit, right? Like that I have to do the work. You have to do the work.
And as soon as we start doing the work, the that beautiful, perfect dream disappears like a soap bubble, but it wasn't real anyway, right? That was just the idea. We
Yeah.
have to do the work to bring it. I'm really, really resonating with this. Um, can you, as you have gone about your way of writing, can you share a craft tip or two that you've picked up along your travels?
Sure. So there's a book that I read a few years ago. It's a wonderful book. Do you know If You Want to Write by Brenda Euland?
I've said it on this show before, but I'll say it again. It was the very first writing book I was ever given. It was given to me by Perry Peterson, who was my ninth grade and my 12th grade English teacher. And he wrote in the On the first page, he said, "For Rachel, who inspires me." And that
Oh,
was when that's when I had ink I knew I had ink in my veins, was when he gave me that book. And it's so old-fashioned. And tell us about it. Tell us where
that's
that lives in your life.
amazing. So I don't even know how I came across it. I think I was reading a book review that mentioned it and just picked it up a few years ago. And there's so much that has stayed with me and that struck me about that book. First of all, I can't believe it was written in 1938
Yeah.
because it's just, I think it was 1938, but it feels so modern. It's a little
Mhm.
snarky. It's like a
Her
little
voice is so
like,
funny,
her voice is so
acerbic but
funny.
sweet. And
Yes,
yeah.
it's very, very modern. Um, but the thing that has, I think, influenced me most from that book is when she talks about microscopic truth. And she has this whole section where she talks about when you're writing and you're trying to capture something on the page, um, to really slow down and focus on it and describe it in the most true way possible. And that seems
Mm.
obvious, but there's so many times, right, that like it's so tempting to say, like I could be describing a scene, in an essay, where my husband and I are by a lake. And it might be so easy to be like, and we were sitting by the blue water and so forth. But it to slow down and say, like, well, was it really blue? We
Mm.
think that lakes are always blue, but like if I was going to take a step back and like really put myself in that moment, maybe it was actually steel gray.
Mhm.
Maybe there were some blue reflections from the sky. Maybe there were flecks of, foam from the winds. Um, but really, really not trying to avoid as much as possible, um, writing using the assumption of the way
Even
things
just you
are.
saying those few sentences about the lake put me there. I didn't I didn't have
Yeah.
any emotional connection to sitting by a blue lake. I don't care, but as soon as you started to describe it, especially with the wind-capped tips, like then I knew what that was and how that felt to be there.
Yeah, yeah. And when you extrapolate from that, I mean, especially if you're a nonfiction writer, but fiction too, if you're trying to get at some sort of deeper truth in your writing, right? Like some deeper meaning, some deeper aspect of the human condition, you're not going to do that if you're not using true words, right?
Mhm.
Or true descriptions. So I think that's my interpretation of microscopic, right? That it's
Love
not
that.
enough to just say, I'm going to, try to capture truth of the human condition in this novel, right? Like if you're trying to capture some truth of the human condition, then like that lives in the details, and how how closely observed they are.
The more specific we are, the more universal our writing
Hmm.
can be appreciated. And
Hmm.
now I need to pull that book off the shelf and reread it because it has been probably 2 decades since I read it. So, um, oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much for that. Well, may I ask you, what is the kindest thing you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
So when my children were younger, um, it was so hard to access solitude. When my kids, even when they were still in preschool, maybe they had half days, someone was always sick. Like it was hard to access solitude. And I am someone who, I know there are some writers who can. I'm friends with some writers like this who can get in a few words in the pickup line at school,
Hmm.
or get in a few words on the sideline of their kid's soccer game or whatnot. I really can't. I know my temperament. I really need to kind of have some time to separate myself from the world and like key into my creative self. I need time to return to the real world. I really need some extended time. So when I was younger, I did start to take a few writing weekends,
Mm.
and negotiating that with my husband, and figuring out how to make that work. And that was hard
Can you give us
because
a little detail on what you did? Like specifically, did you go far? Did you go near? Did you go for 2 nights? What did you do while you were there?
yeah, it depends, different things. My husband's aunt and uncle have a home on Cape Cod that they don't use during the winter, and they gave me access to that to,
Dreamy.
yeah,
So
just to
dreamy.
go, yeah, and same thing. We have friends who have a little like ski cottage up in Vermont who let me use it. I've stayed at like bed and breakfast sometimes. Not for me, I'm not a big like group writers retreat type of a person. All I really want to accomplish in these weekends is to be alone and to write.
Hmm.
And um they're not frequent. They've become less frequent as my kids have gotten older because I find that I'm more able to access that solitude, during their longer school days. They need me less, right? So even
Yeah.
when they're home, they're doing their thing, they're doing their homework,
Yeah.
and it's just different. But it was so needed when my kids were little, and I felt so tapped out, and I felt like my resources were being pulled in so many different directions. And you ask what's like the kindest thing that you've done for yourself. I'm really grateful looking back. I'm grateful to my younger self, for having the kind of courage or vision to just say, this is what I need, and I'm going to carry some guilt with me as I do it. I didn't, drive off to Cape Cod shouting with joy and screaming with it was tempered. It was like I was excited to do the work and I felt guilty that I was
I
leaving
feel
my
like
family.
that
But
might be part of the cost, right? The cost was gas, buying the groceries, and maybe a little bit of motherly guilt. And that's just what you
totally.
pay to get there,
Yeah.
to have that deep work time. And that's such a kind thing to do for yourself. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it paid off because it was you investing in yourself as a writer, believing in yourself.
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Also, may I ask about a specific moment where you knew you had ink in your veins?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as you talked about your teacher who gave you that book. Um, For me, I mean, there were a few moments, starting even in grade school when I fell in love with writing. But I think the biggest turning point was in college when I took a class with a writing professor named Lydia Facandini, who I've described her as the kindest person I know, but which doesn't mean she was nice. She she was
I love her
actually
already.
she was actually really scary and formidable and kind of severe. And she had these glasses she would pull on and off all the time dramatically. And this like black hair that she wore in a really severe bob. But anyway, she was so brilliant. And her kindness was in taking us very seriously, right? Which is a
Mm.
huge generosity. Um, Taking us seriously in her responses to our work. She would write on a typewriter. I'm dating myself, but
Mm.
also her.
Hmm.
Um, she would write, 2 pages of typed comments in response to pieces that I turned in. And I think it was really her encouragement or recognizing that I had this proclivity in me. I mean, I knew that. I knew I enjoyed writing. I knew that I had a facility for it, but I think it was she who first made me believe, like, oh, maybe I could actually pursue this in a real way.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that's really the moment in college when I thought, yeah, I want to be a writer. Um, yeah,
Taking you seriously as a kindness. I think that is amazing. Is she still around?
she's not,
Oh,
unfortunately.
well,
Yeah,
I'm glad
but
that you said her name.
I know, and I know she deeply impacted and inspired generations of students there, and I'm still friendly with some of them. We talk about her.
Oh, how cool. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Will you tell us about the best book that you've read recently and why did you love it?
Yeah. So I just finished a book by an author named John Kenny. It's new, called I See You've Called In Dead. It's a novel. It's, well, exactly. That's why I enjoyed it so much. It's hilarious. And it's not my usual type of book. Um, but I met him because we did an event together in Providence, last month. And he was so funny. I mean, I have not laughed this hard in so long. Bought his book at the event and am reading it now. And the premise is the protagonist is a obituary writer
Ooh.
who very early on in the book, he's sort of down on his luck. His wife has left him. He's seen some better days and has a little bit too much to drink and he's home and he's just playing around and he just writes his own obituary and accidentally files it with his new friend.
That's amazing. Oh my God. And then what
And
happens as a
so,
result of
and
that?
what happens as a result of that. And so it's very funny, but it's also very poignant and moving. And he's able to do that thing where it's like the funniest material undercut with some of the most sort of um, emotional, moving, heartbreaking material as well, which is, I love that combination, right? Where you're sort of
That's
laughing, but also very moved at the same time. So
that's
yeah, I
like
recommend it.
my favorite kind of thing. So thank you very much for that. I see you called in dead. Best title. Um, Now will you please tell us about your gorgeous book? Give us a little bit about what it is and what it holds.
Sure. So Mothers and Other Fictional Characters is a memoir and essays that really explores the blurry boundary between truth and fiction when one is a woman, and how the stories that we inherit over the course of our lives can become so entangled with our own that in certain ways we no longer know which parts of us are true. And I began writing the book when my kids were very young. And I had felt in many ways that I had lost myself in becoming a mother. There were many things that were transformational in positive ways. But also after I became a mother, I felt very often haunted by the feeling that I was both myself and not myself at the same time. And I really began writing the book almost out of desperation. It was almost the gift of desperation
Mhm.
to try to get back to the truth of who I was, what I wanted, um, and what I wanted to pass on to my children.
Mm.
So it explores the various templates that women are sort of pushed towards stepping into over the course of the female lifespan. So mother is one of those templates, but I also explore girlhood, young adult womanhood, middle age, and also sort of looking ahead to the crone years and what are the options available, to women when they are past their childbearing years. So I'm
Mhm.
sort of disentangling these narratives from the truth of my own life. So I'm using myself as a kind of case study.
I
Yeah.
found it moving, beautifully written, and ambitious in the best way, in that I was kind of, as we do, I was kind of taking apart in my head as I read it. And I was like, oh, can she do this? Is she pulling this off? She's pulling this off. She is nailing this. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
writing something that is my favorite kind of catnip. Where can we
Mm.
find you out there online?
Yeah, I mean the best place to start is probably my website, which is NicoleGraevLipson.com. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm on some other social media platforms, but I'm more of a lurker there. Instagram is pretty much where I hang out.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Right.
It's been a joy to talk to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.